Well, another week, another episode of the Time Out podcast. My name is Michael Kwambo, and joining me as always, we have Dora Otieno and Richard Owanjohi. What is Time Out? As always, Time Out is about taking a moment to re-strategize on a lot of things, literally just, come up with the ways of making sport better, both in terms of tactics and business approaches. And why Time Out? Because we feel that everybody's talking about things in the headlines, but we don't have the opportunity to talk about things behind the headlines. And who are we? We are people who are involved in sport in one way or another. We love sport. We have worked in sport. And with that 47-second introduction, Timeout episode 4 is now live. And last week, the Kenya Rugby Union announced the resumption of rugby activities in the country. What are your expectations, Dora, Richie?
I expect KCB to retain the trophy. Nothing less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I should go next. I think for me, that right now they're not favorite because then it has been a very somber couple of months since we went into lockdown and also suspension of sports activities. A few teams have lost their sponsorship, and hence then they will be a bit hard up coming up with ways of convincing or motivating their players. But I think it's anyone's game to win right now, and let's see what the traditional Ngong Road is with the Queens and Mondays you look up to against the KCB.
Yeah, well, of course, the games are coming back. There will be no fans this time round during the matches. Of course, this is in line with the COVID-19 regulations that have been put in place both by the government, Ministry of Health, and also Kenya Rugby complying with the guidance they have received from World Rugby. So I think when the games do resume, it would be good because probably is closing in on nearly a year, because the last time there was activity on the Kenyan rugby landscape, it was actually towards the end of February 2020. So, going 12 months without the activity and for it to come back, I think is something good. Let's just hope that, I know there's one or two nitty-gritties that are still being sorted out in terms of who will meet the cost for testing, but it would be good to see sport resume. And today, I'm not going to take a dig at politicians. Remember, you're watching Time Out Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Time Out Kenya Pod, and on Instagram at Time Out Kenya. Now, something interesting happened on Friday night, and the news broke on Saturday morning. The FKF Chief Executive Officer Barry Otieno and the Harambee Stars team manager Ronnie Oyando each handed 6 months suspensions by the Confederation of African Football for quote-unquote COVID-19 violations. We all saw the charge sheet, number one. And number two, the fact that there also comes with a hefty fine on the Kenyan Federation, $20,000, an equivalent of 2.2 million shillings. Of course, FKF CEO has responded. We also saw his response. But your take on it, guys?
It's crowded because more dollars being controversial because one, I think we were still in the middle of two, there were players coming from the international, among other professionals. Three,
Richie, we don't seem to be getting you clearly.
Okay. No, your sound.
Yeah.
Okay, can I put the mic better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, so I was saying there were a couple of things that happened before the game, and I think this is where then IFAF needs to take responsibility for the actions. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and we had foreign players coming through. And then there was no clarity on what testing they had done prior to the travels, and also as it started the jet to Comoros. And then I think, when the team landed there, they didn't have enough time to just go through the health protocols. And again, there was very little information coming from the FKF, management. And this is where then CAF had to really come down on us and just say, if you guys didn't make sure the tests were transparent and honest enough, then we have to make sure that you act within the regulations and the rules.
We saw a response in the People Daily on Monday. The FKF now flipping the script and saying that the Comorans played a lot of dirty tricks or pulled a lot of dirty tricks. Of course, we have seen the weaponization of COVID-19 on the African continental football scene. We've seen it during the CAF Champions League and Confederations Cup matches, whereby teams are actually complaining that they go into the testing and they're told you can't have your star players because they've tested positive. Do you think that is a valid argument from the Football Kenya Federation?
No, they're just trying to cover the behind. Because this team, I know they mostly picked their friends to go and represent the national team. I'm sorry to say.
And I don't want to side with Dora as well, because I think if then FKF knew that we were going to play Comoros or any other team on international assignment, make sure you have the necessary testing kits and all that, and just make it as open as possible. Again, do not underestimate, as you say, the potential of the pandemic or what is going to happen, because we all know what happens when teams are playing, in foreign soil. You'll always have issues that will come up about, accommodation issues or lack of water, power blackouts. So they should have anticipated such scenarios.
Yeah, then also, this is another question that has just popped up in terms of the conduct of both Barry Otieno and Ronnie Oyando. I know they've given their feedback and their response, but do you think they acted in a manner that was right by them, or was that just literally throwing all common decency out of the window, the way they are alleged to have reacted in Comoros?
Maybe they are acting under someone's instructions. Quote in quote.
Yeah, I think this is a point where you decide what is the best thing for the team and what is the best in the national interest. If a player is positive, just on the bench and isolation. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? We have a bench of about 21 players. That's why you take more than the 11 in the team.
Yeah, well, remember, you're watching Time Out Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Time Out Kenya Pod, on Instagram at Time Out Kenya. Football Kenya Federation Premier League action continued this past weekend. In comparison to the previous weekend, a lot less goals scored, 16 in total, but there was quite a number of highlights. Dora, Vihiga United defeated Gor Mahia by 1-0. Also take pride as a native of Vihiga County in that result. But what can you say about that?
Man, I thought we were going to have to win, guys. That performance was just shit. From the defense to everything. I watched the replay. Their lucky fans were not there.
And by the way, talking about fans, do you think that the absence of fans is contributing to Gor Mahia's fortunes or misfortunes on the field of play?
Yes, we need the 12th man on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, Richie.
Yeah, the big teams are the ones suffering because with lack of fans, then all you're left to do is your target and your players, the level playing field. And it was interesting because going to Western, I thought Gor Mahia would be propelled by the fact that they have a new coach, They have a new team pushing them, but I think they're back to the drawing board on what needs to be done, and I think maybe it's going to be a slow climb back.
Yeah, last night watching the FKF Premier League review show on KTN, they were able to bring in the Gor captain, Kennedy Muguna. And what I liked about him, Kennedy Muguna, I beg your pardon, not to be confused with the firebrand politician. So there's a close similarity in names. Watching Ken Muguna actually speak to KTN last night and saying that the team takes collective responsibility for the loss. And I felt that was a very strong statement from someone who actually shows why he is a leader on and off the field of play. They're not blaming anybody. They're not blaming their misfortunes. They're blaming themselves, saying that, they've been given instructions by the coach and they did not follow them to the latter, and that's why they were punished. Do you think Vaz Pinto needs more time? I know that was only his third game in charge. He's probably had about 5 or 6 training sessions. So do you think he needs more time to assert his influence on the team?
Yeah, I think he does. He needs maybe 2, 3, or 4 sessions, then maybe he can understand the team.
Okay.
Yeah, I think barring any issues coming up with the closure of any other tournaments internationally, he should have exactly the next 5 games.
Okay. There are still other interesting results in the KPL. Of course, KCB returning to winning ways with a 3-1 win over Western Stima. There was some drama around that match when it was alleged that a Ugandan national was arrested before the game on I think it was on Friday in Kisumu, trying to influence the Western Stima players to lose that game by a bigger margin. That's number one. And number two, these allegations of match fixing are not new. Remember last year, Cleopas Shimanyula, the Kakamega Homeboys chairman, actually fired his coach, called out some players, actually got them, out of the team. So I think it's a matter of concern if there's any meat on that bone.
But I think this match fixing, it's like maybe an inside job. That maybe the other matches we've not caught the guys who have been behind it. But this guy was fortunate to be arrested. But a Ugandan national, that has question marks.
Okay, we'll interrogate those questions.
As Dora is saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So there's definitely something brewing in there, because as we can see, I keep saying this, we have about 10 or more betting companies in Kenya.
Yes.
So there's definitely going to be something that you want to influence a result here, a result there, and you might take on the non-dispute games and not the major ones. So definitely, I'm not saying that KCB or Western Stima were part of the scheme, but it's something that needs to be investigated and come in the open.
Then some other significant results from the weekend. Kakamega Homeboys finally getting their first home win of the season. They defeated Bidco United by 2-0. And then a result that silenced Kariobangi Sharks. They had gone into that match talking about the way they've never lost to AFC Leopards in the Kenyan Premier League. Silenced with 2 goals. Now, 1 goal coming from the red-hot Elvis Rupia. That was his 9th goal of the season. The second one, literally at the death, and after AFC Leopards were down to 10 men, from Jafari Owiti, spotting the keeper off his line and just lobbing it over him. 2-0, a big win. And do you think this is a case to justify Anthony Modo Kimani as AFC Leopards' permanent head coach? Because I remember he guided the team after Kasa Mbungo left towards the end of last season. And then there's the Jurgen Klopp lookalike who came to the country and then started claiming that his life is in danger. And then the next day is unveiled as the coach of a team in Malaysia. I think that was just a businessman who was using AFC Leopards as a piece of collateral, in case the deal in Malaysia doesn't work through. But having said that, Anthony Kimani, intelligent player he was, intelligent human being he is, and turning out to be quite an astute coach, because even after he took over from Kasam Bungo, the team still put in a number of decent results. I remember they were just let down by issues of pay, which of course really unsettled the team in terms of chemistry. But he's steadied the ship so well. So do you think that this is an argument for him to get the job on a full-time basis? And then also, is it a case where we need to trust in our local talent as well?
I think the AFC leadership should just give Anthony the job, and we need to trust more in our people than foreigners.
Yeah, today I'm concurring too much with Laura, and again, to agree with her, and also with you, Kwambo, because if we cannot build local talent and local managers, and he has the resource to prove himself. I think KFC or even football itself, they've gone through quite a rough foreign coaches, some with mixed results, most with really amateurish games and tactics. Anthony Kimani, as you say, has been, he also worked as an analyst some time back with one of our leading local stations. I think he knows how to read the game, and I think that is proving to be something for AFC as they look to, get into the top of the KPL.
All right. Let's switch gears to basketball. We had the Kenya Basketball Federation elections this past weekend on Saturday. The incumbent, Paul Otula, retaining his seat, defeating Cynthia Mumbo by 12 votes, because the final tally was 57-45. I think for Cynthia, putting in a big shift, considering the fact that she just threw her heart into the ring days before the election. I think, first, Richie, you can tell us about the rest of the office bearers, and then we can discuss this outcome, what it is for Kenyan basketball, and then also in terms of women in sport, in terms of women in sport. And I think the impact that, or the message that was sent by the number of votes that Cynthia got.
Yes, so Paul Otula retained his position as president or chairman of Kenya Basketball Federation. Then we have new officials, including the Deputy Secretary General, Angela Luchivia. She's the captain and trustee of the ladies' team Storms. We also have Ambrose Kisoi, who takes over from Vitalis Gode, who was previously the Secretary General. Then we have Peter Orero as the treasurer. He works with the Kenya Secondary Schools Sports Federation, Sport Association, sorry. And also, finally, Lois Haraka as the treasurer, assistant treasurer, sorry. So what has happened is that there has been an infusion of new blood into the Kenya Basketball Federation at the lower rank. But I think what we had expected was, Otula maybe getting beaten by Cynthia, but then, as you say, it was only a week into the elections that Cynthia announced her candidacy, and then we saw the respectable number that turned up with the votes. And it's also maybe a good shake the establishment to see that the basketball game still has a couple of fans who wants to see a few changes and a difference in the game.
Okay, Dora, your take on Cynthia's shift?
Man, if she would have started earlier, she would have been currently the Kenya Basketball Federation chairperson, because 12 votes, considering she only started 7 days ago.
Yes.
I think we need to be aggressively seeking these elective posts. When we start, maybe start like 2 months before.
Well, I think that's something we will talk towards the tail end of the show. We'll talk about women in sport, because I think they play a crucial role not only in society but in sport. And still sticking with ball games, let's go to volleyball. The new season for the Kenya Volleyball Federation served off on Friday, this past Friday. There was a number of matches. Prisons defeating KCB by 3-1. Pipelines defeating Nairobi Prisons by 3-0. Those are some of the highlights in the women's competitions. While in the men, Kenya Prisons defeating Kenya Army 3-0. GSU edging Equity by 3-2. Sport has resumed. I know it was carried live on Mad Goat television, an online platform. One interesting thing though was that there were fans in the arena. I saw fans. I don't know if they allowed them. You see, that's why I'm saying they were fans. I don't want to, you have to be careful in terms of libel and things like that. There were fans. We don't know if they were allowed or not, but they were in the arena. But anyway, volleyball is back, played in an indoor arena. Do you think this is something that will be sustainable heading into the rest of the season?
Yeah, we've been off season since, is it the whole of past 2020? I think we just need to resume. COVID is here to stay with us. We just need to learn how to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. I think it's a good thing that the game resumes, and more so because Kenya volleyball, or rather the volleyball team for the women especially, will be representing Kenya in the Olympics in a few months. So the more games that they get or can clock in before August or July, the better for us. And also, it's good that they acclimatize themselves within the the indoor arenas, because then the Olympics is fully indoors. And I think that's the challenge that we'll be having as a local league, because at times we have open spaces where the players are exposed to the elements, as opposed to indoor arenas which are more contained, and you have all these fans. Well, unfortunately, we don't have the fans for now. You have all these courts that they need to be able to tackle and how to play around.
Yeah, true indeed. And then also, I know the common refrain when our teams come back from dismal performances on the global stage is that they don't have access to indoor arenas, because global and continental competitions are played in the indoor arenas. But we've played most of our volleyball here on the outdoor turfs and arenas. And I mean, still being able to conquer Africa, I think that one talks about our quality, but there's a point where you have to now take it a notch higher. And I think that's something good on the part of the Kenya Volleyball Federation. Talking about arenas, talking about stadia, Sports Kenya says that 2 stadia will be ready by the end of Q2. That is the Kinoru Stadium in Meru and Kirubia in Tharaka Nithi. Any value they're adding to Kenyan sport?
Are they sure they'll be completed? We've been hearing in 6 months' time our stadiums will be completed.
Yeah, I think they're trying to save face, because there are other stadia, including the likes of Kipkeino in Eldoret. We have Rodrigo in Nyeri. This is an embarrassment.
You seem to be losing you, Richie, again.
Sorry, I think it's the connection. As I'm saying,
yeah,
it's Sports Kenya trying to save face. It's embarrassing because we have Kipkeino in Eldoret, which has been going on for the last, I think, 6 years. We have Rorengo Stadium, somewhere in the middle. It's now a cattle, almost looking like a cattle dip. I mean, it's tragic for some of these things to be talked about in this age. They committed to giving us 5 stadia in the last 6 years or 8 years, so to say. There is only now National Stadium that we have to show, and this was after a presidential order. I mean, why do we have to keep going to the executive for simple infrastructure to be done?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of questions to be done or to be asked, because building the stadium is one thing, but what value are they going to bring to sport, to the society in general? Because you could have all these beautiful stadia, but if they're just sitting there like white elephants, it's nothing. Look at Kasarani, for example. it stays idle for the longest periods of time. I mean, this is something that should be generating revenues. Even, for example, last year during the whole break because of COVID. This I say because of what we witness elsewhere. You find, for example, Stamford Bridge in London has a hotel, it has a whole supermarket and gym. Basically, what they've done is make use of the facilities within. And for example, in the Kenya Sevens team and the rest of the teams on the London leg of the World Series are in London. They stay at the hotel, which is within the stadium complex. And that is just the norm everywhere else. You're able, for example, to lease out your fields, for example, for things like preseason trainings for foreign clubs and so on and so forth. The whole point is that these stadia are constantly generating income. So they'll complete it well and good. And then what next? We'll see political rallies and soldiers marching on the fields. I don't think it is going to improve the quality of sports in that region or in the country. Those are just my sentiments. And still, talking about quality of sport, let's get to the National Olympic Committee of Kenya. They signed a deal last week with the Kenya Charity Sweepstakes. It's a 4-year deal worth 10 million shillings. 10% of those proceeds will go towards the National Olympic Committee of Kenya. In the deal, we do know that this is part of helping in preparations for Team Kenya's participation at the 2020 Olympics and the 2024 Olympics as well. Your take on that?
This is good for the Olympic people because at times the government is always saying we don't have enough funds for the national teams. But I hope this 10% won't go into someone's pocket. Yeah, as we've been told, we lose money every day.
Okay, I think it's a shot in the arm, but I think it's quite a measly amount if you compare with what we are looking to take to Tokyo. If we have two national teams in the rugby sevens, the women's and the men, we have the volleyball team, we have the athletics team, we have, I think, boxing, I think 3 or 4 boxers who have qualified so far. If you look at that amount and the preparations that they need to undergo, yeah, I think we still need a bit more, corporate coming through and sponsors. But I think it's a good start for Kenya Charity to take this. Maybe they're trying to beat other betting companies into this. And hopefully let's hear that companies reacting to this.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to look at it. Probably we would say that the amount is minimal, but again, there's the Swahili saying haba na haba hujaza kibao. Like I said, the more people come in to support the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, the better. You could find this is an easier way of reaching the targeted fundraising limits, or is it the targeted funds in terms of fundraising, and it could actually go somewhere. Let's cross the seas and go to MMA. Conor McGregor silenced, man. I wasn't expecting much of him, but to be silenced in that manner, it was beneath Conor McGregor.
He should have just stayed retired.
Yeah, I think the hunger for the game has disappeared, and you could see from the sort of punches that Dustin was throwing, especially in that second round. Conor, I think, either came for this for the money pass, or just to tell us he's back in the sport. But this is the point where he decides: are you all in? That you decide to go to MMA, or because there's also the rumor or possibility of him having a boxing fight with Manny Pacquiao. And I think that has been on the card for quite some time now. And again, it's the money passes now becomes a bit, for us, the sports purists, then it's a bit tragic because then we don't get to enjoy the purity and the enjoyment of fighters or people being in the ring. But I hope for Conor, he's going to reflect on this and decide when he comes back into the octagon whether he's going to put a better show than what he did over the weekend.
Yeah. Now let's talk about loss of hunger. And this loss of hunger is in football. two defending champions are struggling. One is already out. Arsenal knocked out of the FA Cup by Southampton. That bizarre own goal from Gabriel, just compounding Arsenal's problems. But I think they were lackluster on the day. Willian and Pepe, frauds, if you ask me. Arsenal lacking creativity. But the big question is, were they really interested in the FA Cup, or are they chasing a top four finish in the Premier League? Because suddenly they've hit a good vein of form in the Premier League, and they're within reach of actually breaching the top four, should they just maintain that consistency.
I think Arteta should have just given their younger players a chance to play the FA, because I think the senior team are more finishing in top four than the FA Cup.
Again, as you say, it's a gamble. You decide to lose the FA Cup, which is usually a trump card for playing in the European League, more so the Europa League. The top four right now looks very competitive, and it's still anyone's game. I mean, you have the Leicesters, you have Everton attacking the Man Cities, Man United, Liverpool. You also have the Southamptons crashing into the party every so often. It's a bit of a gamble, and I think we're just halfway to the English League. The harder games now coming between now and I think March or April thereabouts, and also because again most of these teams will still play in the European engagements. We have the Champions League coming up in Feb, and also the Europa League.
Okay, Manchester United, top of the English Premier League. They topped defending champions Liverpool by 3-2 and kicked them out of the FA Cup. Could this finally be the turning point for Manchester United in terms of looking competitive and actually, in with a chance? I wouldn't say for a league and cup double, but to threaten for a major trophy, because they are playing well. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer seems to have gotten his combinations and tactics right.
Yeah, I foresee them then get the FA and the main trophy, but mostly the main trophy. The FA is anyone's cup to take.
Yeah, again, Dora, I think the FA Cup may not be in their best interest, because it's only a trophy that they'll add into their cabinet and maybe qualify for Europa League. I think the main thing that Ole Gunnar is gunning for is the league itself. And right now, it's anyone's league, as I said. Liverpool slumping into a lull and sort of flat performances and losses. Man City is still very haphazard. They lose a game here, but they win two, or draw here. The Everton and the Leicesters still crashing into the party and trying to knock into everyone's door. If Ole Gunnar can still keep his team cohesive and just keep at what he's doing, I think he has a chance in winning the league. But I think it will not be. He can't have both, and I don't think he'll have any of the two. Or sorry, he'll not have the two together. It's either the league or the FA Cup.
Cool. Now let's talk about departures. First, Mesut Ozil confirmed to have left Arsenal, joining Fenerbahce in the Turkish Super League. Good riddance or goodbye?
I don't know what was the beef between the management, but they should have just let him play the whole season, then release him. I thought it was unfair on the management.
I think it's always a dicey one for managers when you have one of your top players earning top dollar, but when they get onto the pitch, they're not performing according to what you're paying them. And I think has been the crux of the matter between Arteta, Ozil, as well as his former coach Emery. So Ozil comes into the game, he plays well. 2-3 games down the line, he loses it. Or, he's not in it altogether. And I think that's the one thing Arteta made clear when he came through. If you're not going to put your weight, then you will always find your way to the bench. And that's what happened to him. He did not even get into the reserves.
Yeah, coaching is indeed cruel. and you have to make decisions that are not popular. Remember, when you're looking for results. The other departure, which was confirmed yesterday, Chelsea legend Frank Lampard. He was a great player, steered Chelsea to a lot of success, and it was felt that after his spell with Derby County, he would replicate more of the same at Chelsea. But yesterday, Roman Abramovich very rarely does this. I don't think he's ever done this. He fires his coaches, but doesn't pay tribute to them. He paid tribute to Frankie Lampard, but that's besides the point. He's out of a job after 18 months. Was he, in his own words, too young for the job? Did it come too early? Remember, he had used these same words against Andre Villas-Boas when he was coaching Tottenham Hotspur a while back. So is it a case of karma coming to bite back, or did the Chelsea board just not have faith in him eventually?
I think this is a situation of Frank Lampard that proved to be oversized. I think his success.
Maybe, yeah, Richie, your sound again.
Okay, sorry.
I would like to capture every bit of you, every bit of what you're saying.
So as I was saying, I think it's a bit of oversized shoes that Frank Lampard got into coming into Chelsea, because the expectations initially after the transfer embargo was lifted in the 2020-2021 season, he was given over £200 million to spend on players. So halving the middle of the league and you are sitting at number 9 or mid-league, even I as Abramovich will take that decision. I need to see performances and I need to see them now. I can't give you all that open slate and you're still giving me excuses of people slumping or mixed basket in results. If you're not in the top 3, then you're out.
Dora.
I think Roman has been patient with Lampard, because the last, if you watch with Chelsea's matches, I think that we say maybe he was too young or he was not ready for the job. He needed to start as an assistant first, then take up as a coaching role.
Then also, could it be that great players don't necessarily always make great managers?
True.
It depends. I think the romanticize. We have seen what Real Madrid and Zidane has done. We have also seen what Atletico Madrid has done with what's his name, Diego Simeone. So it depends. Once in a while, you might strike gold. I think, and especially so in the English Premier League, with the sort of expectations and the number of fixtures that you play, it's going to be a hard sell. I think there are very few English managers, if any, who have succeeded at that level. So it's always a challenge.
Okay, I have a story that is related to Frank Lampard. It's about a guy from Nandi Hills who we entrusted to win us the Interhouse Cross Country. So because he was called Dominic Masindet, he was our safest bet. This guy came back walking to the finish line and he's like, hey, so what we learned from that day was that not everybody from Nandi Hills can do cross country. Yeah, there still was some good news last night. Michael Olunga getting on the scoreboard for Al Duhail. It was an Emir Cup round of 16 match. They were playing against Al Ahli Doha. He grabbed a hat trick. Of course, it was a cup game against a weaker opponent, but do you think that is just the way for him to get started into Qatari football? Given that, in my opinion, it's a notch higher than the J League where he had played for 3 seasons.
I think yesterday's game was an induction for him. He'll go back to his scoring 3 goals and above in each game, hopefully.
With great service, a great front line, Olunga will always score for you. I think we've seen that not just at club level, but even at the national level. And kudos to him. And if that's the way he takes out his initiation, his fight, Well, let's go for bigger things in the coming season.
Cool. Now, I know we said we'll talk about it. The time has come. Let's talk about women in sport. And I think the question that we need to ask, not only on this show, but on a day-to-day basis is, can sport accommodate more women at the top? I ask this in mind with the recent candidature of Cynthia Mumbo in the Kenya Basketball Federation elections. And then also we had seen, I can't remember her second name or her full names, but Jan Mohammed, who was at the helm at Cricket Kenya. These are just some of the few lady administrators who have been at the helm in Kenyan sport. We've had the likes of Sylvia Kamau taking charge at Kenya Rugby, Barbara Kokonya also at Kenya Rugby. She was a general manager about a decade ago. But the question is, can sport accommodate more women at the top?
Yes, I'll go by Cynthia's votes, because I'm seeing people will, given the number of votes she got, I believe people are willing to accommodate women in the sports industry. And if she had actually started earlier, I believe she would have defeated Otula.
Yeah, I think it's important that we agree that sport is universal, as I keep saying on this podcast. And being universal, then that means that we have to be accommodating to all sectors. And in this particular instance, then we need more women at the top. For example, let me give you an example of the National Olympic Committee. I think out of the top, like the top 5 or top 6 officials, I think it's only one woman, and I can't even remember her name at this point. And if we are going to change the narrative around sports, major sports in the country, we have to have that feminine touch or that inclusivity, because then there's a different angle, there's a different way of doing things that they'll bring into the sport. And I think we have to challenge these things, and especially at the local level, because we have seen a lot of patriarchal and man only organizations. Look at Kenya Volleyball, for example. The women are the ones who perform in the federation, and they're the ones who sell the country or the sport to the world from this country. But we don't have top officials who are ladies or feminine for that matter. I think it's about time that we push that envelope and make sure that we have more women at the top.
Yeah, well, can this now be translated to better opportunities for women and sport at large when we have them in these positions? When we talk about the positions at the top, it's not necessarily like being at the helm of a federation, but also in more influential capacities, like taking charge of teams, for example, because also you rightfully put it, Richie, that the Kenya Volleyball Federation is one of those examples where the women's team performs well. Would it be ideal, for example, to have a woman coaching the women's volleyball team? Because through it all, it has been a man. Of course, they say that all these things about interactions between women and so on and so forth, but I believe those are myths that can be debunked. So, just asking again, will this translate to better opportunities for women and sport in general?
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a CEO, but let's just take an example. When a national team is traveling out of the country, most of the technical bench is normally just men. I rarely see women. So I think we need to start from there also.
Another great example is from your sport, Kwambo, in the sevens. We have seen what the national women's team has done in short span of playing together and also playing region and continent.
Yeah, maybe if you can adjust your mic, Richie.
They qualified. Sorry, I'm saying, yeah, we have seen what has happened with the rugby women's team, the sevens team. In its short time that they have been together in the last 5 years, they have proved themselves beyond doubt. They have represented us in continental challenges. They qualified for the Olympics. So all I'm saying is that if given a chance and put the proper people in place, both at management level, coaching level, or even just administrative level, then we can have big opportunities and even a wider appreciation of sport, both locally and internationally. what can women can do in sport.
Yeah, remember, you're watching Time Out Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Time Out Kenya Pod, on Instagram at Time Out Kenya. Let's have a countdown. The Kenya Open Golf Tournament dates have been set from the 18th to the 21st of March, 2021. Richie, you and I have both covered the Kenya Open Golf Tournament before. Should introduce Dora to golf.
I'm still waiting to be introduced. I'm still waiting.
Okay, that introduction shall be done. Your take on Kenya hosting this event?
I think this is one of the major highlights of sports in Kenya, because given Kenya, or rather the golfing scene is usually a local circuit, the Kenya Open gives us an opportunity to see what the PGA Tour and also professionals from across Europe and parts of Africa can do. And I think I won't have sort of hang in there and try to challenge every so often these Marcindizas of this world. But I think it's about time that we see we can improve on that and have a Kenyan, meaning the Kenyan Open.
Dora. Yeah, I know you're still waiting to golf, but it doesn't hold you back from saying something about Kenya hosting the Kenya Open Golf, especially after last season where everything was cancelled.
Yeah, this will be, I'll do it from more of a tourism perspective, maybe injecting something into the economy. Yeah, this is good for us.
Yeah, and then news that was confirmed yesterday by Rugby Africa is that Kenya will again host the Bartes Cup from the 27th of March to the 4th of April. I think that's confidence as well. The fact that slowly but surely, as you said, we have taken cognizance of the fact that COVID-19 is here with us and it's here to stay. But we have to move on. So the Rugby Africa Bartes Cup will be held in Nairobi. There's also a lot more tournaments. In July, there will be the World Cup qualifier, again in Nairobi. So sport beginning to come back, make a resumption. I think it's good also just in terms of lifting the national psyche, because last year with no activity, with no livelihoods being pursued, the general mood of people and the country as a whole, I think, in my opinion, dampened. And when you have activities that you're hosting, it gives you a ray of light that things can eventually come back to being good. Now let's talk about transitions. Hank Aaron, Henry Hank Aaron, baseball legend. He played for the Milwaukee Braves, who later became the Atlanta Braves, passing away this week. This guy was an icon on the field of play and off of it. May his soul rest in peace. Maybe Richie, you can tell us a little bit more about Hank Aaron.
I think he's one of the legends of the game of baseball, and he was one of the first black professional players that came through in the 1950s and 60s. His impact was huge, among the first to record 500 home runs and 3,000 hits. He also, was involved in a lot of the civil rights movements in the 60s. They were behind the scenes supporting Martin Luther, as well as other sportsmen and professionals coming to the game, both in baseball, boxing, and basketball as well. The interesting bit is also his transition into business, because he was one of the few that was able to transition successfully from sport into business, and he owned more than 30 franchises by the time he was passing away. So he's usually just held as an icon in sport, and I think it's a bit tragic that he, leaves the sport quietly.
And Dora, what do you think about Hank Aaron's transition from sport into successful business?
Like you said, in sports, we are prone to so many injuries. So you have to think ahead. After playing in the field, what next? So I think I like his kind of business. Like he had franchises. He was also a philanthropist in Philadelphia. So we need to, how do I say it? Not like writing a will. After once I retire from sports, what will I do next?
have a plan. Yeah?
Yes. Like who? Like Tony Parker.
Definitely, yes. And then also sad news from Brazil. Palmas losing 4 players after they tested positive to COVID-19. Though, do we really like cast aspersions on Brazil's management of the disease because it's in public domain? I don't want to do that. I think at this point in time, we just empathize with Palmas. I mean, losing 1 player is bad, but losing 4, I mean, that is literally half of your playing unit. So tragic, but again, it just shows you how the reality of COVID is still there and how we have to continue protecting ourselves, following all the guidelines, much as we are clamoring for sport to return and to return fully.
You couldn't have
But I think also the players should also take precautions. Even they should just be in the bubble, just like NBA. The bubble should be enforced in any sporting nation. If it's football, basketball, hockey.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a tragedy for the Brazilian club, but it's also just a reminder that the pandemic is still very much around with us, and also just take the necessary precautions. If you have issues of players testing positive, they can remain at their respective camps, or you just isolate. But then if they have to travel, take the necessary precautions, because then losing 4 players and a manager, that's going to be quite impactful on the club. And may their souls rest in peace in case.
Yeah. Now let's look at the crystal ball. Ferdinand Omanyala, he is the current Kenyan national champion over 200 meters. He's the record holder. He broke that long-standing record that was held by Joseph Gikonyo of 20.35 seconds. He's run a time of 20.17 over 200 meters. He aims to clock sub 10 in the 100 meters. I know this was once done by Kennedy Ondiek, but that was hand timed and there was a lot of aspersions caused. But he aims to do the 100 meters in below 10 seconds. So is this something possible? Is he capable of doing it?
But Usain Bolt runs under that.
Yeah, but
So he can.
For once, let Usain Bolt stay retired. That is too high.
If you want to run sub 10, you think you can.
Yeah.
Like Kipchoge proved no human is limited.
Yeah.
17 because of a failed drug test, and he wants to come back to the sport. I think that, as we say, something that we can look out for. And, he reminds us of the rivalries of Joseph Gikonyo and Kennedy Ondieki in the sprints. And hopefully we can have that excitement back in the shorter races. We have seen too many of the long distances. It's about time that we also appreciate our short distance runners.
Yeah, well, that is the crystal ball, which brings us to the end of this show. It is time for that timeout. But before we go, your closing remarks. First, we'll start with you, Richie, then Dora.
This week I look for women. Yeah, we have seen what a little nudge, a little push can happen. And let's look forward to more women in sport. Interestingly, our minister or CS of sport is a lady, and we can see the impact that she's had in the last 2 years. Hopefully, we can have more people or more women in leadership.
My closing remarks basically still women in sport. I think our people should learn from like you see the former American coach, who's coached a national team with an 87.5 winning rate. And what's the coach who took over when Spurs coach was ejected? Becky. So I think we need to learn from them. There's hope for women in sports in Kenya and Africa in general.
Yeah, true indeed. And I will echo both your sentiments and further add that quite a number of women teams in the country have brought us a lot of pride and joy. Let's just look at the women's volleyball teams at club and national team level, dominating Africa. For the longest time, before Telkom, before Sliders, there was a team called Intercapitale. which dominated the Kenyan and African scene. And then it was Sliders' turn. I think Sliders is what morphed into Telkom. I'm not too sure. But they too have dominated Africa and really brought a lot of smiles to us. Our women athletes as well. The likes of Catherine Dereba, the likes of Pauline Konga, who became the first Kenyan woman to win a medal at the Olympic. So I think we need to encourage a lot more women in sport, not only competing, but in leadership roles as coaches and as administrators. They play a great role in society, and I think this is an agenda that we need to also collectively keep pushing here on Time Out Podcast. And with those remarks, this has been another edition of the show. It's time to take that time out. Catch you again next time.
Time out.